This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
And from the border of liberty and prosperity in the highway to the north, this is Safety Wars. We're sending out season's greetings. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and we have Kwanzaa. I'm not sure exactly on what the greeting is, but Kwanzaa greetings to whoever celebrates that starting on Monday. Why the Christmas music? Well, it's Thursday, December 22nd, 2022. There's a lot of twos in there. And what's my point? Tomorrow, we plan on being on the air every night next week. Right? From 8 to 9 p.m. here on safetyfm.com. One of the things, now we're an up-and-coming program, up-and-coming podcast, whatever we're calling this thing. And as everybody knows, I am a lifelong talk radio fan. Right? Sheldon Prentice and I had this show, and then had this conversation one time. We both grew up in the New York area. Now we listened to WOR, 710 AM, and 77 WABC when it was still playing music, and then all of a sudden music wasn't playing anymore. And there's a specific reason for that. WABC Music Radio, they still brought it back on some over the weekends and on their podcasts. We, back in 1980, 81, it's a shame I don't remember the year, John Lennon was assassinated, right, in New York City outside his apartment in the Dakota. And they decided that they were going to have tributes on the radio to the Beatles and to John Lennon, and they had a lot of call-in programs and everything else. Well, so the story goes, a lot of the program directors back then realized that talking, right, what we're doing here, talk radio, call-in radio, calling in and taking phone calls, all that stuff, they could actually make money doing that. They had more listenership. So it was pretty much sealed. The nail was put in the coffin on AM music radio in the New York City area. I mean, for years, I used to go outside of New York City and, 50 miles in any direction, and all of a sudden you're picking up AM radio stations that actually play music. And that pretty much, talk radio was always there. You had Rambling with Gambling on WR 710, and you had all these programs going back to the beginning. But when the program directors realized they could really make money doing this, and there was an interest in talk radio on current events, a lot of radio stations went by the wayside, WABC radio being one of them. And you're going to say, well, Jimmy, what's your point here? I don't get your point. What's your point? Get to the point. The point here is this. It's a very intimate type of interaction here. You get to know people on radio. I mean, even today, even with this thing that we're doing here, I go out and someday, hey, I heard that your podcast. I heard your radio show. Hey, blah, blah, blah. Hey, great thing. And no, they're from friends and from some business associates and everything else. They feel that they get to know you. Eventually, people like to, they look forward to hearing you, even on the podcast. I'm sure I know I have a lot of critics out there. But people look forward to this, right? Even if it's one or two people out there. And it's all about psychological safety, right? A lot of people are out there around the holidays. I know a lot of friends of mine. We've invited them over for the holidays and everything, but a lot of people, some take it, some don't. They don't have family. They don't have friends. Their friends are far away. Their family is far away. They feel isolated and everything. And they like to hear, this is like their connection to the outside world, talk radio. So there are a lot of programs out there that they make sure that they do live radio. Right, a lot of program hosts make sure that someone's there to talk, and I feel like obligated that if I'm sure there's going to be some nights I can't make it, but I try to make it, especially around the holidays. I'm going to try to make it so people can still have that connection with me, and I appreciate it. You don't know how much I appreciate it. So we plan on being on the air every night. If we miss, I apologize up front, but that's where we are. What are we going to talk about, right? A lot of people, I can't imagine a lot of people here celebrating. It's Friday and it's a 3-day weekend and it's Christmas. Even for the non-Christians, I work. I'm like the only Christian in the management group on the major project I'm working on now. There are people coming from all over the world, mostly Eastern Europe. They're either Muslim, they're Hindu, or they are atheists. And they're celebrating Christmas too, right? If it's even just sitting back and relaxing with the family, they're celebrating Christmas in some way. As one of them said, it's the holiday season. So they make it a point to celebrate something, spend time with friends and family on this. So it's like a universal thing, even if it's secular here. And I can't imagine Friday night anyone being here listening to me. Right, maybe over the weekend and everything else. So I wanted to make it a point to be here today just to wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Let me kick off and this thing. As you know, we talk a lot about ritual here and how important ritual is in our lives and in our organizations. What are some of the things that we do as far as ritual? And then we'll get to the news and everything in a couple of minutes here. What do you do on Christmas or on whatever holiday it is, ritual, to try to remember things in the past? So back in 2016, I had, everyone knows here, I had my brother passed away in 2016. I was very close with him. And we took it very hard. Now, people mourn in all their ways. So, and what we started was a tradition. And I didn't want to ruin everybody's holidays because all upset because I'm, upset over my brother, understandably, right? And we didn't want to ruin it for the children. I had very young children at the time. So we came up with a tradition. And it was sort of like cute. It started out as, but it turned into something else. And I'm going to call it Charlie's birthday. And you're going to say, who's Charlie, Jim? Charlie is going to be 47 years old this year. I got him as a child at my teddy bear. And, he's been, I hate to, I'm anthropomorphizing him, but it's about a Christmas present that I've had since 1947, since 1975, 47 years old. And I wanted to remember all of the past Christmases and all the people that we've who we've lost along the way. Parents, right? This became meaningful last year when my mother-in-law who lived with us passed away. And then my brother passed away in 2016. And when this thing started, and we allow ourselves time to mourn. Yeah, but Jim, it's a birthday party. Yeah, we have a birthday party, and it's always a New Jersey themed birthday party. I'll give a plug for some things, right? Here, New Jersey is famous, and the New York area, for Entenmann's chocolate donuts. Well, Entenmann's is a regional bakery back in the day. They have a little bit more wider distribution, but we have Entenmann's chocolate donuts. We have bagels. We have blueberries. We have pork roll or Taylor ham, if you're from that group of people, right? There's a New Jersey debate. And we have New Jersey themed birthday party. And this is how we kick off our Christmas celebration, where we allow ourselves, where we remember our Christmases that were very happy in the past, like when we got Charlie, right? When we were a child, 1975. We remember Christmas memories. We remember people we've lost along the way, my grandparents, this year my father, my mother-in-law Nancy, my brother John, a whole bunch of other relatives and friends that we lost along the way. And we mark off a place. And now that we have an appropriate time to mark our mourning of these folks, now it frees us up to enjoy the rest of the holiday. Because I know I've seen a lot of people that are all broken up or all very upset. Now, it's Christmas dinner and they're missing a loved one. They're missing this or this, blah, blah, blah. And it prevents them from enjoying what they have, because they're worried about what they don't have and what they're missing. So we've ritualized this, where we have a birthday and we have my daughter blows out the birthday candles for Charlie, and we remember things, everything. Tears are shed, got a couple of laughs. So this is what we do. Maybe this is how we handle it. I think it's a pretty healthy thing to do, and it frees us up for the rest of the weekend. Maybe you can come over the weekend. Maybe you can have something similar. But the thing is, you have to get beyond this in your mourning process. And the mourning is a process, and because it prevents you from enjoying the present, right? When you're mourning for the past, and you have to live in the present. Present is what we're doing, what we're living in. You can't do anything about yesterday. You can do something about right now, and you could plan for the future. And that's how we fight that safety war all the time. Right? I know it's cliche. Well, Jim, you always, we're fighting this all the time, and we win battles a lot of times. We win hearts, we win minds, right? We're making the world a better place for the worker, making the companies more profitable. All that stuff goes into the safety war. And this is another front in that war, is mourning. And I'm going to go to break right now, and we're going to come back with some financial news.
In the professional safety community, communication and planning are just a few keys to your program's success. The question many practitioners have is, where do I start? Dr. Jay Allen, the creator of the Safety FM platform and host of the Rated R Safety Show, has built a global foundation to help you along the way. Go to safetyfm.com and listen to some of the industry's best and most involved professionals, including Blaine Hoffman with the Safety Pro, Sam Goodman with the Hop Nerd, Sheldon Primus with the Safety Consultant, Jim Pozell with Safety Wars, Emily Elrod with Unapologetically Bold, and many others. As individuals, we can do great things, but as a team, we become amazing. Dial into safetyfm.com today and surround yourself with a powerful force of knowledge and support.
You are listening to Safety Wars. Tomorrow's Safety Today.
Okay, we're back. Let me explain the menu here. Why we choose the menu we do. Why it's all New Jersey themed, right? Well, these menu items, right? Entenmann's chocolate donuts, bagels, right? Blueberries, pork roll and everything. You're going to love this. This is what people feed black bears up here, are those things. All right. Because you have outlet stores that sell all this stuff real cheap. And people were buying this for years when bears started to come back to New Jersey in large numbers and everything else. People were out there feeding the bears. And then before you know it, they don't feed the bear one day, and the bear comes around looking for Entenmann's chocolate donuts and starts ripping apart the house. So that's why we do that. It's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek. I know everybody's going, wow, New Jersey theme. The other thing is Charlie is from New Jersey, you know. So I guess the other alternative we could have had is we bring in the garbage can and, eat out of the garbage can like bears do. But anyway, financial news here. Yes, I know. My jokes, nobody ever gets them. Okay, we're going to add some other commentary here to the normal stuff. Right, gold at $4,000. Analysts share their 2023 outlook as inflation and recession fears linger. This is an article from Charmaine Jacob out of CNBC.com. Gold prices could surge to $4,000 an ounce in 2023 as recession fears persist, said someone from Swiss Asia Capital. That person explained that many economies could face a little bit of a recession in the first quarter, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm going to tell you this. I've been hearing all my life pretty much on how gold is going to go to 4,000. I don't know how much credence I give to that. That we would have to be like the Weimar Republic level of economic distress. And I read a phenomenal article on that yesterday. From a historical journal on the financial stuff and the political situation in the Weimar Republic. Are we headed that way? I don't know. So, by the way, Weimar Republic became Nazi Germany. So, I don't know if we're at that place. Well, I've been hearing this from time immemorial. Suddenly, everyone is hunting for alternatives to the dollar. So people are looking to park their money elsewhere because they're worried about the falling value of the dollar and everything else. Well, dollar is pretty strong right now, but that's only because, everyone else's economy is woofno. And essentially the way that they collect a lot of these statistics, they're lagging. They're always revised later on. So who knows what's going to happen here with that. People now I've been hearing about this since probably the early 80s with alternatives to the dollar. One of the more popular ones was a thing a couple years ago called the Liberty Dollar, which was managed by a man named Bernard von Nothaus, who was convicted of basically counterfeiting. Is essentially, from what I could recall, on that. But it had more than that, where he was trying to issue his own currency from an organization called NORFED, which is the National Organization to Repeal the Federal Reserve Act. And what he ended up doing was issuing currency, and it was backed by silver and gold. And basically, people were all confused. And so, you're counterfeiting and this and that. He got convicted of a couple of things and got released. In my opinion, he got a little bit railroaded there. But this should have been a leading indicator. Now, how is this safety related? This should have been a leading indicator to how people are. You give people a little bit of information on this, right? And then all of a sudden they take the information, run with it, and they start doing crazy things with it. Just like with the COVID stuff, right? So rather than listening to quote unquote the experts or people with experience, they went on to Instagram and TikTok and this and that and Facebook and, what's the other one? Reddit. And all these other websites from all this stuff got all these cockamamie ideas and everything else. And this is what happens when you start things like that, you start movements like that, they go sideways. We're still dealing with the fallout of COVID and all the bad information that was out there and conspiracy theories and everything else that goes along with it. But this should have been, this should have been a leading indicator. And let's talk about January 6th, because we're still dealing with the fallout with that, with the report being released this week and the criminal referrals from the House of Representatives. So, I'm sorry, it was a joint commission, all right? Well, the joint commission here on the January 6th commission. So, you give people a little bit of information and they go haywire. I was talking about this with someone today. So on to our other regular stuff. Dow Jones Industrial fell slightly today, 33,027. That was a loss of 1%, just over 1%. S&P 500 down 1.5% almost, at close at 38,2239. NASDAQ fell, loss of 2.1%, closed at 10,476.12. Russell 2000 down 17,5409. Russell 2000 down. Did I just say that? 17,5409. U.S. Pardon me. 10-year Treasury note closed at 3.696%. Bitcoin down slightly, but today, 1677.25. Crude oil came up by almost 1%, 78.23. Let's look at those precious metals. Here we have gold at 1801.50. That's up 480 an ounce. Silver up to 23.77. Just over a dime. Platinum fell to below $1,000 to close at $995.70. And palladium is at $17.50. It's up 8.10 dollars there. That's that for financial news. EPA publishes the IRIS handbook and final IRIS assessment of perfluorobutanoic acid. Butanoic acid, I guess, PFBA, and related salts. Today, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, is announcing, and this is right off of their press release, is announcing two important documents from its Integrated Risk Information System, the IRIS program, on perfluorobutanoic acid and related salts. These publications demonstrate EPA's commitment to transparency and rigorous science for use in decision making. Well, holy mackerel, what about that? Transparency and rigorous science in making decisions. Wow. The IRIS handbook transparently provides, going on and on and on. So what does this all say? Let me go down through the press release. And it says how wonderful the IRIS program is. All right, the final IRIS assessment reviews the evidence of potential non-cancer and cancer human health effects resulting from exposure to PFBA. Final assessment found that sufficient oral exposure to PFBA likely causes thyroid, liver, and developmental effects. The final assessment also includes a non-cancer estimate of the amount of PFBA that one can ingest every day that is likely to be without harmful effects. So you can go look it up. Is essentially it. Nearly 4,000 customers, again, out of power because of winter weather. A couple of years ago, we had them out of power also. So you've had a couple of years to prepare there, Texas. And let this be a warning for the rest of the United States and everywhere else where I'm being heard. What are you going to do when you have a power outage? Right, so 40,000 people were without power as of 4:41 p.m. this afternoon. I don't know what time zone that is. This is all from knocked out power, right, from wind and weather and everything else. Not as bad as what it was a couple years ago. But again, what are you going to do? I've always said, no, when they upgrade and redo the power grid, they should put everything underground. But what do I know, right? That causes its own problems. Here we have, again, are we being manipulated here? At least 5 killed on treacherous roads and nearly 9,000 flights canceled as once-in-a-generation snowpocalypse begins to batter almost every state. 6 governors call a state of emergency amid sub-zero temps and whiteout conditions. So, New York, and this is not for the New York City area as far as I know, unless they updated the forecast here in the last couple of hours. We're talking up by Buffalo. No, so everybody thinks that if you live in Buffalo that you know anything about New York City. It's like a 9-hour drive, right? And people think that if you're from this metro New York City area, you know all about upstate New York. And I'm going to tell you, that ain't true. You may know where Albany is, but that's about it. Believe me, my wife grew up in the metro Albany area. Nobody, I don't know, knew a little bit, but, you know, that was just from my earlier bike riding career, right? New York, Kentucky, Missouri, Oklahoma, Georgia, and North Carolina have called states of emergency. Chicago and Denver airports will be the worst affected by travel chaos ahead of Christmas. Chicago is under a winter storm warning until 6 a.m. Saturday, with 3 to 6 inches of snow predicted. Oh, they're getting 3 to 6 inches of snow, and it's a snow apocalypse. In other states, oh, you're going to love this. Like Denver and Wyoming. Denver is not a state. Wyoming is. It has already begun to snow. Denver is in Colorado with high straight line winds. The Midwest and Plains are expected to get heavy snow, while the East Coast will be battered with rain. So all the stuff I was supposed to take care of tomorrow, I can't do. The outdoors stuff. So again, winter weather. Right, it happens right when we're on our first day of winter. Winter weather happens in the winter. Now, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to prepare for it? We're going to talk about that later on, right, as our main subject. Tesla, full self-driving triggered an 8-car crash on a Bay Bridge. This is out of San Francisco, right? So, is that going to be the new excuse now? Right? The self-driving car software did it. And all these things have to be litigated, I guess. Eventually, they have to figure out who's going to be responsible. Flagship. Again, we're going to be dealing with war news. Where is it? Hold on. Can't do the war news without... The flagship of the Russian Navy caught fire. Admiral Kuznetsov. Let me go that. Admiral Kuznetsov. That's it. Admiral Kuznetsov, the flagship of the Russian Navy and the country's only aircraft carrier, caught fire on Thursday, according to Russia's state media. This is a thing that has been, they've had it in dry dock, right? Going a long-term overhaul since 2017. It had been due to return to service this year. Well, they better hurry up. They only got 9 days left here. They're probably going to have it out in 2024. But a floating dock used, again, look at all these injuries. And again, I've always said that shipyards, right, unless they're like federal shipyards, and we don't have too many of those left, the federal shipyards are often, so the privately owned and the smaller shipyards, they're like 20, 30 years behind the times on a lot of OSHA regulation. You go and you look at those 29 CFR 1915 regulations, there's not a lot of them there. They refer to a lot of outside stuff like ANSI and FBA, and people, they rely heavily on the general duty clause for these companies to do assessments and everything. They do have some stuff, and you know what? If you want a course and maritime safety, give us a call, 845-269-5772, or contact me at jim@safetywars.com. Why? Because we do outreach training for shipyards. So, again, here we have a ship in a shipyard, right? From some of the pictures from May they have on this website here, looks like they're doing a lot of freaking work on this ship. All right. 2. Number 3 is this. Here you have a nation, and regardless of what your thinking is on the Ukraine war, that this is impacting the war probably, and it may be taking this on because of the war. But one thing's for sure, they've been plagued by several accidents. All right. So in 2018, the floating dock used to overhaul the ship abruptly sank, causing a crane to punch a massive hole through the ship's flight deck. A separate fire broke out on the ship in 2019 from a spilled fuel. So they were going confined in enclosed spaces on hot work. killing 2 and injuring more than a dozen. And the head of the United Shipbuilding Corporation, which oversees the ship's refit, told Russian state media Thursday that the fire was small and was extinguished. All right. Now, according to the spokesperson, all the relevant fire system worked normally. There was no damage, no casualties. Anyway, again, here we have a ship, right, in a shipyard, and you had several of these incidents that are delaying its eventual return to service. Again, maybe we should be thankful that they don't, that these things happen. That way they can't get it into the war. I don't know what to think of it. This I do know is that shipyards are a targeted workplace for OSHA. Okay, Russia, no jurisdiction. Yeah, I get it. In the United States. And you should really, there's a lot of opportunity there. And there's also opportunity for improvement, opportunity for safety, and everything else that goes into it. And I've done a lot of work in them. So, I don't know. Why they're so far behind on a lot of this stuff, I don't know. Culturally. Because a lot of times the Coast Guard, it has the jurisdiction of the ships while they're underway. And a lot of the personnel feel that the Coast Guard has jurisdiction when really OSHA does when they're in a shipyard. And they feel that they can do whatever they want. Often what happens is that they have the crews, especially in the smaller shipyards, do the actual work on the ship. And so this circumvents the shipyard competent person often, at least in their minds. It doesn't really, but in their minds. And therefore, they don't have to worry about anything. Every shipyard has a shipyard competent person. They don't have to do anything. It's a very dangerous working environment, to say the least. Europe is rushing arms to Ukraine, but running out of ammo. Where did you hear this first? It was on our podcast. We were doing regular podcasts before the live show. Earlier this year. So because of a lot of environmental laws, and they get blamed, but this time it might actually be there, and some lead smelters going out of business earlier in the 2010s, there has been a huge shortage of ammunition in the United States for the civilian market. Also, we've had a lot of government agencies go out and make huge purchases in 2014, 2015, 2016 at the end of the Obama administration, including the IRS and a couple of other things. They bought all the ammo, essentially, that was available. And there have been huge ammo shortages since 2016 in this country. So my question at the beginning of this year was, are we actually going to have enough ammo to get for this war? And here we go. I mean, the ammo places are going and, they're working overtime. Really simple, creating all this ammo and all over Western Europe and Eastern Europe as they're able to. So there's a shortage there. Again, I know it's a foreseeable thing. I think the last time that we've had a shortage like this was during World War II. Okay, I want to get to talking about cold stress, so I'm going to hold off on a lot of this stuff until tomorrow. Cold stress. Now you're going to say, well, what's the big deal on cold stress, Jim? This should be pretty straightforward. I'm going to tell you nothing straightforward on this. So OSHA, as we know, they are going to start regulating. There's some in the pipeline, proposed regulations. Then you got public comment, and then you got review. We understand on heat stress. All right. What about cold stress? Does OSHA have specific regulations on cold stress? And the answer is no. So you have to go to what is called the General Duty Clause. So what is the General Duty Clause? Hold on, everybody here. All right. So you have the general duty clause. So that is in 29. Hold on. Here we go. Let me get the exact thing. All right. Under the ocean policy, right? The general duty clause is, quote, is in section 5, subparagraph A1 of the Occupational Safety and Health Act. Right, an employer has to furnish to its employees, quote, employment at a place of employment which are free of recognized hazards that are causing or are likely to cause death or serious physical harm to its employees. Employers can be cited for violation of the general duty clause if a recognized serious hazard exists in the workplace and the employer does not take reasonable steps to prevent or abate the hazard. The general duty clause is used only when there is no standard that applies to a particular hazard, but the following elements are necessary, and this are ands, not ors, to prove a violation of the general duty clause. A, the employer failed to keep the workplace free of a hazard to which employees of that employer were exposed. B, the hazard was recognized. C, the hazard was causing or was likely to cause death or serious physical harm. And D, there was a feasible and useful method to correct the hazard. The other thing is that's not mentioned in a lot of this stuff is that there was a court case, I forget which one it was right now, I haven't been able to find it, where someone was cited under the general duty clause and nobody was hurt, or there was another law that they got cited under, nobody was hurt. And the employer said, well, nobody was hurt, there wasn't this, blah, 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 blah. Why are you citing this? And basically, the whole spirit and other things with with OSHA is that you're supposed to prevent accidents. That's where the priority is. So if you call up OSHA at 1-800-321-OSHA and you say, oh, I had a fatality, okay, you have to report that within 8 hours. That goes on the list. 10 minutes later says, I have an imminent danger. Someone's going to freaking die if this doesn't get fixed. Which one do you think goes to the top of the order? It's the imminent danger. Someone's dead. There's not a lot you could do. You're going to go and examine, do an investigation. You're going to do whatever you want, try to prevent the next accident from occurring, blah, 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 blah. So what do you do? So that's a higher priority than something that already happened. So you're supposed to be anticipating this stuff. That's the whole thing, anticipate. So now let's go back to cold stress. There are no regulations on it. They go to the general duty clause on for this, right? So let's go through this. What can you do about cold, right? You have workers working out in the cold. Believe me, I worked in a freezer for 3 summers, all right, working my way through college. All right, I worked in a freezer with my brother Wally, and it's cold, so you're not going to get around it. So, but what can you do about it? You might not be able to do anything about the cold, but you have to have the hazard being recognized. Yeah, it's cold. Now comes the thing is, well, how cold is cold? And at what temperature do we have to start doing things? You have to do an assessment. There's been documented cases that people who are submerged in water at 75 degrees for long periods of time, let's say they fall off a ship or they're shipwrecked or something, guess what? They die of hypothermia. So, now, generally speaking, when does cold start getting, I start worrying about cold stress? Around 55 degrees. Well, Jim, that's awfully warm. There's people out there, especially up in Maine and in northern Washington and Alaska, they're out there, they have heat stress at 55 degrees. Yeah, that's true. Because they're acclimated to the cold. No, hey, at the end of the winter, I'm out there in a short sleeve shirt too when it's 30 degrees out. But you get acclimated, right? But as you get older, and I'm finding this out, you're getting less and less acclimated. So I should say 55 degrees is my threshold. Why? Because I was out working a job and it was around 55 degrees and I got soaked and I got mild hypothermia with that. Meaning, shaking and everything. I couldn't get warm. One of our listeners, Bill Michalik, right? He probably remembers that. I couldn't get warm. So guess what? The hazard was causing or was likely to cause death or serious physical harm. You could freeze to death. You can get frostbite. You can have all different issues because of the cold. There was one guy that fell off a dock in New Jersey about 10 years ago at an oil terminal, and he froze up. And they didn't have a means or methods of getting him out of the water. And eventually they got him out of the water, never returned to work. And it was like a legitimate thing. It wasn't like, he ended up with frostbite, a little bit of cardiac issues, things of that nature. Okay, so yeah. Indeed, there was a feasible or useful method to correct the hazard. This is where the controversial thing happens. OSHA does, for weather-related stuff, normally the employer is not responsible for supplying that. That's one of the things a PPE a employer doesn't have to supply. Is that okay? Now let's flip this around. Someone gets hurt at work because of the cold. Is that an OSHA recordable? Good chance it's going to be an OSHA recordable. Absolutely. Because it causes other issues and everything. Good chance. Let's say that you had to bring the person to the hospital because they froze. And then what happens? They spend an overnight visit at the hospital for observation or just to try to, maybe that exacerbates another thing, another health issue. That might be an OSHA recordable. They might get frostbite. That's an OSHA recordable. I'm going to say this much. If you're in ill health, and I've had the training and I do a little bit of training on cold water survival, guess what? You fall in the water. I'm over 50 years old. My family has a history of heart disease. I don't, but my family, extended family does. Fall in the water and like 45 degree water, or like this morning, what we had in New York Harbor, like 28 degree water, right? Fall in that. What happens? You go into cardiac arrest. It isn't like the Titanic, right? The movie, right? My Heart Will Go On, where you have Kate Winslet and you have the other guy, Leonardo DiCaprio, and he's over there and he's, they're there and they're having a nice conversation. What the hell? No. You're like the guy in the back with a whistle and everyone's in a panic with this, which is, by the way, not what you're supposed to do. It makes their situation worse. But anyway, people get cardiac arrests. So how do we correct this? Like all the other OSHA regulations, situations, you have to do an assessment. So what's the assessment that you do? Is this a possibility? Yeah. What are the likely things you do? 2, what's going to, right? And number 3, how do you correct the hazard? So let's go through the hierarchy of controls. Can you eliminate the hazard? First question is, can we do this job in the spring? The station that we have, the international station down in Antarctica, and if you're out there listening to this, I know the painters, or I don't know if they're there doing the job anymore, but they're painting in Antarctica. They only do it for 1 month, right? For a 1 month in our winter, because it's their summer down there in Antarctica. They get there about this time of year and they just stay there. Now you're going to say, okay, what are they painting in Antarctica? They are painting pipelines and oil tanks is essentially it. And it's a federal contract from the federal government, and they go down there and they paint this because guess what? The only time that they have like a month to do all the painting and maintenance, because what do you think happens? It freezes up, and all your fuel for Antarctica has to be delivered there. All the fuel oil and all the other fuels that they may need have to be delivered there in like February before everything freezes up again. So what do they do? They're not out there in the middle of winter painting. Are there paints that will work in the middle of winter? Yeah, I can tell you what, you got the money, they got the paint. But no, they eliminate it. Can they do it in the spring? They do it when it's the weather is. A lot of times you can't do that. Seems like every time I'm on a pipeline job or water job, it starts in November. Okay, right? Yeah, I have divers in the water in November, right? Around New York. It sucks. Anyway, okay, great. Now you're trying to do that. Can you eliminate this? Can this be done from a boat, maybe? So it'll still be cool, but you're not going to fall into the water or get into the water. That sort of thing. Okay, can we substitute? I hate to find out what the substitute is for that, right? I can't think of anything offhand. Now let's engineer something. Okay, this is where you could actually do this. And again, with the hierarchy of controls, it's been revised a little bit, at least culturally, right? You have good, better, and best, rather than all these other steps that you have to go through. Well, yeah, you can engineer it a little bit. And no, that is in an engineering situation or a PPE situation, a little bit of both, right? Which is at the bottom of it. They do have dry suits and they do have wet suits. PPE, a wetsuit, they pump hot water through the suit and for like divers, right? An administrative control. What would be an administrative control would be a work rest regimen. Okay, you work and then you rotate workers in and out of the cold environment. That could be another way. You could do that. It's an administrative control. The other thing is PPE. What kind of PPE could you be using? I tell you what, on my winter jobs, out of the oil industry, all the winter jobs are out there are, no, I'm not working this winter in the oil. I do work in the oil industry, but not this winter. Everybody has a heated vest. Would that go well in the oil industry? Probably not, because you're working in a Class 1 Division 1 environment or a Class 1 Division 2 environment where you're not allowed to have, or you have to have intrinsically safe equipment. Guess what? That battery-operated vest ain't going to work. There are other things you can do. I have an exposure suit or a Mustang suit, or they call them float coats, things of that nature, that are especially designed. They're life jackets, but they're often used in cold weather. I tell you what, when it starts to get under 25 degrees Fahrenheit, I put one of those on because I'm nice and warm. The other thing is that there are suits available, like in the oil industry, that are made for like the Arctic Circle. I'm not going to advertise the brand, but it's a very well-known brand. I actually got one of those for work, and it's fire retardant for the oil industry there. What else are you going to do? Your feet keeping warm. Warm boots. Warm socks. And we have a whole training program on this, right? What kind of clothes? Wicking, layered clothing. You basically have 3 layers of clothes. You have a base layer, which is like long johns, your regular undergarments, things of that nature that you may wear. Long sleeve t-shirts. Then you have an environmental layer. And then you have a insulating layer, another layer on top. And then you have an environmental layer, which could be a raincoat, a windbreaker, things of that nature. What's my point? If you're the employer, you have to figure out what works and what's appropriate for your working environment and everything else that you're doing. Because cold stress is a real thing. People get injured with cold. I don't know what the statistics are. I'm sure with this one, it's heavily underreported. But the thing is, you're still responsible. The other thing is this. Cold employees, are they going to be really that productive? How about, this is what I do to build up goodwill when I'm get hired as a acting safety director, which I did for a paint company for many years. On October 17th every year. Why October 17th? Because I learned my lesson from supply chain issues in the 1990s when I was in charge. On October 17th of every year, I poll the people I'm working with, right? And everybody that I'm working with gets an email. Winter is coming. Winter is coming. Do you need anything for winter weather? right? And I always say, well, you want a good hat. Why? Because most of the heat's lost through the hat, through your head. So if you have a good hat, right? Okay. And I get things. Well, Jim, I could use like a pair of winter coveralls. Okay, great. We'll put it on there. Hey, Jim, I could use a couple of good pairs of winter gloves. And I said, as long as they're work gloves and they're used at work, okay, check. I could use a helmet liner. Check. I could use this. And guess what you're doing? You're building up some good faith and political capital for your work crew, for your coworkers, because it's showing that, one, you care about them. Number two, that you're thinking ahead. And this way, maybe once you get the orders, I give people a week to get the orders together. I know it's December 22nd, and okay, it's a little bit late, but okay, that's fine. There's still time, right? You could, now you have some lead time. You have things go on sale, like my mother, always looking for those sales and everything else. Now you have opportunity, and now you're able to prepare for winter. Maybe you can plan out a training class. If this is a real hazard, you're in a maritime environment, you're working along a waterfront, you're working on a ship or a dredge or a drill rig in cold climates, or up in northern Alaska, and you need that North Slope training, right, that I had several years ago on my second honeymoon. Yes, I did go for a safety training class on my honeymoon. My wife had to work, so I said, let me get a training class in. But I got those CEUs. But anyway, what's the idea? With all this stuff, you plan ahead, you write plans, you do training. I know on the Deadliest Catch TV show, they showed a couple of times their preparation for winter weather, which also included how fast you can get into a survival suit. Wow. Also, let's say that you're going to get a survival suit or a exposure suit, things of that nature. Do you need training on that? Damn right you need training on that. You also need a lot of money. The prices of this stuff have pretty much doubled since about 2008. So now, when I paid $450 for a set of coveralls, right, the Mustang suits coveralls, they're about $450. Now they're going anywhere from $750 to $1,100, and I'm sure as the winter goes along, they get more and more money. All of this stuff, planning ahead of time, and everything else is really important. And again, hoping for good weather, it's not a plan. It's not a plan for success, especially with cold weather and the safety war. So I'll be active next week on social media. We'll be going, doing everything. I'm going to try to make it onto the Rated R Safety Show tomorrow, time permitting and everything else. And I don't know what Dr. J. Allen has for tomorrow, but we'll try to get on there. If I don't speak to you, I want everybody to remember. All right, now let's review this a little bit. Psychological safety, right? If you have issues, right, mental health issues, right, I want you folks to, there's a lot of resources out there. Now we have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK. Right, if you want to talk to someone, or 988 is the 3-digit dialing code that will route callers to National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. But basically, I'm getting this from 988lifeline.org. So if you're feeling blue, I'm going to tell you, there is help out there. There are resources out there. You're important. Your life matters. Let me finish off with this story here. I hate to be a downer, but I'll be a downer here. We had a guy who got hurt, and this is way before I was involved with HOP and Safety FM and everything else. And it was a rather serious injury, and it was in the accident investigation, doing the interview. And I said, and it came across where I felt like I sensed the guy was in a little bit of distress here. I said to him, Mike, I said, what's going on? Nobody cares about me. And I said, what do you mean nobody cares about you? I said, who do you live with? He says, well, I'm divorced. I live with my elderly mother. I take care of her. I come here. I have issues and everything else. I said, so what do you mean nobody cares about you? Nobody cares about me. I said, okay, Mike, your mother doesn't care about you? He says she has dementia. She's out of it. She doesn't know whether she's coming or going. I said, okay. I said, well, I see you have a coffee cup there. He said, yeah. I said, where did you get the coffee this morning? This is early in the morning. There were no coffee machines on site, and it was too early for break time. So he didn't have a thermos. And he said, well, I stopped by this coffee shop. I said, well, who do you see at the coffee shop? And he says, Melissa. I think her name was Melissa. He said, well, we'll pick Melissa. He said, Melissa. So, well, tell me about Melissa. Oh, well, she's about the age, of my granddaughter. I said, yeah, about how old is that? He says about 14, 15, and she helps out her parents at the convenience store where I get my coffee. I said, okay. How long have you been going there? He says, 8 or 9 years. So you've known Melissa since she's relatively young. I said, well, tell me about her. And then his eyes lit up. Oh, well, she's this, she's that. She's does it, and everything else. She's a wonderful family, wonderful young woman, and everything else. She says hello. No, she works there before school every morning, so she gets me the coffee. She knows how I like it. Blah blah blah. We have a little chat in the morning if no one's happens to be there, no other customers, and it says I feel like a connection because I got divorced and my family pretty much went, and then he goes into the whole sad story. And of course, there's always 2 sides to every story, or 3 sides, right? Her story, his story, and the truth. And I said, okay. I said, here's a question for you, Mike. I said, what would happen if you got hurt at work and you didn't see Melissa? He sat in and let that sit in for 30 seconds and looked at it and said, Jimmy, I know exactly what you mean. I said, we all have a connection to each other. Life is worth living. I'll steal a line from Bishop Sheen there. Life is worth living. And it's important that we all have a connection there. If you're having a struggle with mental health or suicide, thoughts of suicide, there is help out there, 988, right? Or the other line, the thing is 988 is the lifeline. You go to 988lifeline.org, right? There's someone out there that's depending on you. There's someone out there that you're impacting that you may not even know. Right? You have a lot to live for. Live for that person. Live for the future. Better times are coming. We're a little bit tough here. We're Americans. We're tough here. We have some grit here in this country. Other countries too. Okay, I'm from the United States. We have a little bit of grit. Elsewhere in the world, get some grit if you don't have it. A lot of countries have grit. But go out there. Life is worth living. We'll see you tomorrow and next week. If I'm not here, just remember, right? I plan on being here. That means something came up. So, live. And for Safety Wars, this is Jim Posel, and I want to wish everybody a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and everything else. So, good talking to you. See you tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.